on this. All right, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for tuning in to our first chamber chat in several months now. So we're back by popular demand, and I'm excited to have with us today Richie Reyes, who is a recently appointed board member here at the Greater Danbury Chamber. And Richie is a restaurant connoisseur, deep roots here in the Greater Danbury area. And we look forward to hearing what he has to say about his family business, his wealth of entrepreneurial knowledge. And Richie, we are very happy to have you today. Welcome. How are things? How's the family doing?
Everyone's doing great. Excited to be here. So thanks for having me, PJ, first and foremost. Kind of like PJ said, our roots in Danbury are pretty deep as a family. My dad moved to Danbury in 1990. By 1991, he had opened up his first deli. That deli has kind of come to be known as an institution here in Danbury, known as Amigos Deli on West Street. So my story really starts there. Ultimately, to save you guys a very long-winded tale on how I ended up back here, I really think, the Reyes family story really comes down to three things. One is the sacrifice of an immigrant family. The second is the American teenage story, which is, me being bratty and saying I want nothing to do with your business, and I'm going to go to college, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to do all these things that have nothing to do with everything you sacrificed for me to be able to choose. And the last one is really gratitude, kind of going through the college experience, looking back and saying, wow, my parents really sacrificed everything that they possibly could have in order to give me a chance to choose. And ultimately I ended up choosing food service, choosing hospitality, and that led from Amigos Deli to Amigos Deli and Minas Carne, located on Osborne Street, to Amigos Deli, Minas Carne, and Mariposa Taqueria, which I'm sure we'll get into later, started off as Maison on Mill Plain, and then to the birthplace of Mecha Noodle Bar, which is also operating in Connecticut along 5 locations. So we stay busy. We have 7 operating restaurants with a few more on the way.
I think staying busy is an understatement, Richie. Thanks for that high-level overview. Appreciate it. So these chamber chats, they came into existence back in the beginning of the pandemic. We wanted to take an opportunity to highlight some of our member businesses, some of the entrepreneurs, the CEOs of both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. So really, this came out of the need to kind of get content out there and keep our members informed of how some of our member businesses are navigating the pandemic. And so I figure maybe we'll just sort of hop right into that and we'll let the conversation go as it progresses. But can you highlight some of the most challenging obstacles COVID presented to you and your team over the last 21, almost 2 years now, 20 plus months?
Great. Crazy to think that, right? Now we're talking in years. At first,
Yeah.
This will be weeks, this will be months, and we're talking in years. But I think the key word when you talk about challenges and obstacles is actually the plural. It's the obstacles. There's no one thing that I think was the end all be all in terms of the biggest challenge. I think it was the largest challenge was being in a constant state of flux, in a constant state of change. So we would block and tackle on one side of our business, and then once we thought we had that under control, we'd have to block and tackle on the other side. So that really reared its head in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. In the first days of the pandemic, March 2020, the first question is, how do we take care of our staff? How do we take care of our people? When you go to takeout only and you employ 300 people, you know that you're going to have to lay off 85% of them. So the very first thing that we thought to ourselves was, how do we take care of them? And we did a series of different things in terms of grocery drives, providing free food to any Mecha member via takeout. And we held seminars on how to apply for unemployment and the best ways to navigate that system. So that would be one, the very first, block and tackle. Right. And then, the second one became, well, how do you run a business for takeout only, right? What are the economics behind it? Does it work or does it not work? And as we kind of started to get a handle on that, all of a sudden the supply chain started to implode. Right. So how do you get pork belly to serve your ramen? How do you get short ribs? And we had kind of block and tackle on that front. So it was really no one thing as much as constantly being open to change. And as we all know, as humans, change is not easy. So keeping morale up and keeping staff from not getting frustrated at all the changes. And, I haven't really talked about government mandates and, you have to wear a mask this day or not that day or in this town and not that town. So it was really about staying open to constant pivoting and constant change.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I'm always sort of a glass half full internal optimist, sometimes to a fault. But what opportunities, I guess, positive opportunities were presented as a result of navigating the pandemic, if any?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a ton, kind of speak to what I just talked about. I think a culture of growth, a culture of discomfort was a big one, right? So the leaders who made it through the pandemic with us, they went through 20 different iterations of what it meant to be an employee of Metro Bar. And today, when I look at that leadership team, I see a team that's stronger than ever because they have the ability to think outside the box. They have the ability to pivot. They have the ability to understand that growth happens at the edge of discomfort. And that was a very uncomfortable time for us all. So I would say that's a big win for the pandemic, for Mecha, for Amigos Deli, and for society as a whole. In terms of kind of more business-related practices, I think it created an awesome opportunity for small businesses like ours, who are a value proposition to the end user, to really kind of grow their business and grow their ability to do sales outside of their four walls. So, Mecha is a great example. The changing of Maison to Mariposa Taqueria is another great example. We talk a lot about in our industry the difference between food for fuel and food for experience, right? And I think Amigos Deli and Mina's Carne are really great examples of food for fuel. The price point is $10 a person, $12 a person, and it's something that's meant to fill you up and keep you going on your day. That's not to say there's no experience, but it's 80% fuel, 20% experience. Then you have some restaurants like Maison, which were $40 a person, really a special occasions place, an anniversary place where you go to have a full dining experience. So that place is an 80% experience, 20% food for fuel. And what we realize is that there's a sweet spot for places like Mecha Noodle Bar and the Taqueria, where at around $20 a person, that's affordable for food for fuel. But at the same time, at $20 a person, you can come in and have a drink and have some great music and really feel like you're having a full dining experience. So there's a play there in order to be able to kind of have one foot in both. And then with the amount of takeout that kind of reared its head and it's here to stay, it kind of blew the roof off the amount of sales that a four wall can do. So some of our restaurants we thought, had a cap of, $2 million a year, let's just say, in sales.
Right.
But when you have 70 seats plus 30% takeout, that 2 million can turn into 2.5. And that became a real game changer for us in terms of top line revenue and helping us through the pandemic.
So you mentioned sort of takeout in terms of something that you noticed change. What long-term or even potentially permanent change do you see, restaurants adopting? I mean, there were these curveballs sort of constantly being thrown, particularly at the restaurant and hospitality industry, and which you've highlighted, made you sort of needed to be, agile and adapt sort of on the fly. But what do you see as being sort of permanent changes in terms of how to run the businesses moving forward in sort of a post-COVID world, if we're not quite there yet, but in terms of long term?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just talking numbers, I mean, it's pretty simple. The drastic nature of the change. Pre-pandemic, I would say across our portfolio, we were looking at 10 to 12% of our sales being off-premise or takeout. Today, where we are, we're just south of 40. So you're talking about 4 times the amount of takeout and off-premise dining that existed prior to the pandemic. And I don't see that dropping to below 30. We never really saw it go below 30 at any time during the course of the pandemic. So I think it's going to normalize somewhere around 30%. So I think that's a huge change. I think that restaurants have to really think about menu engineering and kind of what travels. And then most importantly, I think the piece that no one's really thinking about is what travels and how does the end user feel when they pay for that item and get it at their home. So a great example is like to say is, let's say a chicken parm is on average $20 at a restaurant and you order it for takein. $20 when you order it for takein doesn't feel like you have the same value as when you were in that Italian restaurant with the server and the manager and the bottle of wine, right? So we actually changed our menus and created off-menu items just for takeout. We did, for example, I mentioned Noodle Bar, we did chicken fried rice and beef fried rice at like $12 a pop. Because when you receive a chicken fried rice at home for $12, it feels like you got a lot more for your money than the average $16, $17, $18 that you would have gotten inside the restaurant.
I probably should have had lunch before this conversation. So
yeah, man. I could have sent you some via Uber.
There you go. That would have been good. Little subtle product placement there. Let's talk about the Danbury restaurant scene. And I mean, I don't want to go into an in-depth sort of SWOT analysis, so to speak, but what are your thoughts on it? Positive, negative, strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, opportunity for growth. What are some of your sort of general thoughts from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's up and down, to be honest. I see something that, has the potential to truly blossom and has made some great strides over the years, I'd say over the last 10 years. but I still see a tremendous need to help increase diversity and variety of what's being offered in Danbury. So when I say great stride, I mean, if you go back a decade on Mill Plain, it was nothing but Italian restaurants. There really was no other alternative. Then I think, the original Stanziato's kind of started entering into the conversation, not necessarily diversity because it was pizza, but the idea of quality and craft. And that has kind of really blossomed, I think, along Mill Plain with the addition of places like Mariposa Taqueria, the places like Marketplace, the places like Craft, really places trying to say, you know what, we are still going to offer something familiar, but we're going to try to do it at a higher quality level and give you a better guest experience. I think that's a win for Danbury. If you can pair that with diversity of food and cuisine, I think that's the next evolution for Danbury, right? So if you have a great Asian concept that is going to offer a variety of Thai food or ramen or anything of that nature to kind of break up the Italian American stronghold. But at the end of the day, we're moving towards quality, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, excellent. So you touched a little bit earlier in your conversation about the challenges to face with staff, right? In terms of just getting sort of walloped there in the beginning. How have you been dealing with this hurdle? And this is industry wide, different, you name it, healthcare, construction, and then again, particularly in hospitality and in the restaurant industry. How have you guys been navigating that?
Yeah, keyword was retention.
Yeah.
We went into it, the mindset was, what do we have to do to retain our people? Because we knew the day would come, we'd have to rehire. And there would probably be a mad dash for employees and kind of retraining, and that's expensive, right? So when I first said the first obstacle we had was, how do we take care of our people? That was a long thought out kind of process for us, knowing that it'd pay off on the back end. So for us, it wasn't just about the food drives, and it wasn't just about the unemployment help. It was also about using eJustice, which is a charitable arm of our company, to raise funds for an employee relief fund. So what we ended up doing was tacking 50 cents onto every item sold across all of our restaurants in order to create a relief fund where any employee, no questions asked, could say, I need X, and we'd be able to provide that for them. That little relief fund raised over $200,000. So we had employees asking for $60, $1,000, $3,000, and we would cut them a check to make sure that their families had a roof over their head, had food, and had healthcare. And when the pandemic passed and we were allowed to have in-store dining guests again and bring our teams back, they were all Mecha, they were all Amigos, they were all Minas, they were all in on their original positions. So we didn't have to go to the market and rehire and retrain. We were able to retain our staff, and I think was incredibly helpful then, and taught us a powerful lesson about this current environment. You have the Great Resignation and people kind of moving all around. I think that we really are trying to stand out by saying, I'm not going to go compete in this market. It's almost like trying to buy a house right now. Don't want to do it. I'm going to overpay. Let me do everything possible to retain my people, increase bonuses, increase quality of life. We just changed our policy from 3 weeks PTO after 5 years to 3 weeks after 3 years. So I think all those added benefits are really helping keep people aligned with the brand and the businesses and helping us through this time.
Well, it's kind of a good segue into my next question, is sort of focusing on that work-life balance with family and the importance of keeping that top of mind. Clearly, the restaurant lifestyle is very demanding, right? It's sort of at times could be a 24/7 operation, but how do you balance that, the family and work environment? And I felt bad because I texted you a couple of months ago over the summer, and I think you were on some time with the family out west, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to bother him, but it was time sensitive. So how do you strike that balance to being able to focus on the work, but then giving that time and attention to the family as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example. The example when I was traveling and you kind of shot me a message. I really think it's about expectations and discipline, right? Sure. So we talk to our managers all the time. We want to be as clear as possible on what we expect in terms of outcomes. And if you can deliver those outcomes in 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 55 hours a week, we're not going to ask anything more of you, and we're going to honor your time, right? So we're very clear in terms of if you stay disciplined within your job responsibility, you will have some semblance of work-life balance. And then you have to understand that the world isn't perfect. So this is where the expectation piece comes in. I understand running all these restaurants that I'm going to be able to go on vacation 2 or 3 times a year. And one of those times I might get a call that I have to pick up, and that's okay, right? So really trying to manage the expectation of our staff in terms of what we expect of you. And once you meet that expectation, the time is yours. Just know that when that time is yours, there may be incidences where, we may need you, and, that comes with the territory, and hopefully it's rewarded with the compensation, the time off, the healthcare, and the true desire or commitment to employee well-being.
So thank you. I've been very impressed with your wisdom and your insights. It seems like a pretty, relatively speaking, short career, right? But what piece of advice have you received from either a family member or a mentor or a coworker or a friend or competitor throughout your career that's really sort of stuck with you and resonated and kind of helps sort of guide you throughout your days?
Yeah, I think guide is the key word. And what that piece of advice really was is a question that I've been asked time and time again, not by one mentor or two, pretty much every mentor I've ever had always asked me, what's your why? Why do you do this? Why do you get up in the morning? And if you stay clear on that why, I think it becomes much more easier to manage the chaos of 7 restaurants and 300 employees and things of that nature. So the best piece of advice for anybody I can give is be very clear on your why. And if you're clear on your why, when you do get off track or when you do get lost, go back to what you know is true. Go back to those core convictions, go back to those core values. And once you do that, you'll be able to kind of live from the inside out, and it makes life much more easier to manage.
Excellent. Well said, Richie. So speaking of sort of insight, guidance, and mentorship or encouraging certain directions, any sort of focus you think the chamber could put on in terms of the helping the environment for restaurant and hospitality in our area? I mean, we would certainly take any insight and advice just to kind of help improve our membership and those in that area. Any thoughts? Or
yeah, I mean, I think one of Danbury's biggest strengths is diversity.
Yeah.
So I think celebrating that diversity between downtown, uptown, and getting some cross-pollination, I think that would be huge for the restaurants, because one thing that we always talk about in our industry is that food knows no language, food knows no color, food knows no country. Good food is good food. And I think that leveraging all the good food that there is in Danbury to help further connect the community, I think that would be something instrumental to helping kind of both sides of the ship. And I can speak to it because I'm on both sides, right? We have businesses in downtown Danbury catering to certain populations. We have, places up on Mill Plain. And at the end of the day, those places do cross-pollinate, but I think it takes some guided effort. I think it takes some conversations to make that happen more and more. And the more you can have those two things happen, I think the stronger kind of the entire restaurant scene in downtown Danbury becomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree completely. And look forward to seeing how we could, embark on that cross-pollination. Completely agree. All right. Well, it looks like that's sort of all the time that we have here. Appreciate, Richie, your time. Any final comments that you'd like to offer to our members and to the businesses within our area?
I mean, that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
I think for all the entrepreneurs, I think the one thing I would love for anybody to go home with is that clarity on your why. The pandemic was such a challenging year. It was so difficult for small business owners in particular. And I know that for many it meant closing doors. For many it meant throwing in the towel. For many it meant reevaluating a lot of life decisions. And I know for me at that time, I was going through all those emotions and really kept going back to the why. And for me, it was to honor what we call the sacrificial generation. So my parents sacrificed everything so that I can choose what I want to do. So when I found myself in those moments where it's like, do I really want to continue doing this? I'm like, how could I not? My dad had it 10 times harder. My business partner from Mecha, his parents owned Flow Vietnam, 20 fam. They came over in a sailboat from Vietnam to Hong Kong as refugees, and from Hong Kong to the United States. So you kind of put that in perspective in terms of what we were going through, in terms of what our parents went through. It becomes very easy to say, not only are we going to press on, we're going to grow. We're going to open in Boston, we're going to open in potential other markets, because when we do grow, we give more opportunity for those communities to do the same for their children. Because look, at the end of the day, hospitality employs a lot of immigrants. So the more immigrant families I can employ, the more opportunity I have for that next generation to pay it back.
That's a great perspective.
And that's my why. For everybody, I challenge you to ask yourself your why, and kind of use that as your guiding light.
Excellent. Well said. To sort of wrap that up, Richie, I appreciate that. And thank you again for joining us. Always a pleasure. Congratulations to you and the team, and best of luck on continued success. And we look forward to working with you and to enhance the, restaurant and hospitality scene here in the greater Denver area. And stay tuned for future chamber chats. We're excited that we got this back up and running. We'll be rolling those out shortly. So Richie, thanks again. Appreciate your time, and my best to you and the family.
Awesome. Thank you, PJ. Thank you to the whole chamber as well and everybody watching.
Thanks.